This is really, really fun skill if you just practice with your friends and you go out, do a little bit of urban evasion. Awareness is probably the most important thing in any of this. You know, and having really good awareness can actually keep you out of many situations that you might even need these skills in. And it'd be better to avoid these situations than to have to use these skills. So don't pick a moment of crisis to become aware. You know, we need to be constantly pushing ourselves, and it's not realistic that we're going to be aware all the time. I mean, at one of the schools I used to work at, Alderleaf, we have this game where students are taking clothespins and they're trying to get them onto other people's, like onto their shirt or something without people noticing. And I get clothespinned all the time, you know, because I'm busy with like class and talking to students, and I just don't have the opportunity to be aware in a lot of those situations. And but the most important thing that I would recommend is that you just practice awareness, and then when you become conscious that you're not aware, that you take that moment, instead of kicking yourself and being like, God, I'm not aware, I'm so stupid or whatever, you just take that moment to become aware. So you're like, oh, I'm really unaware right now. Then you just take a moment to look up, look around, check things out, you know, like how many exits are in this room, you know, that kind of thing. Like, oh, I have no idea where the exit is right now. I have no idea how many exits are in the room. So you just look up, instead of getting upset with yourself, just look up and check out the exits, you know. So recognizing your ruts. You know, as human beings, and actually we're not the only creatures that get into ruts. We just kind of go about our routines. We stop paying attention at some point. You know, I know we probably all had the instance where we're like driving to work, and we're just thinking, and the radio's on. And then all of a sudden we get to work, and we're like, I don't even really remember driving here. You know, like you're just on autopilot. You know, you don't want to get into those places. You know, I mean, deer are ultra aware, but deer still get eaten by mountain lions. Because deer still walk down the same trails every day, and they sometimes just stop paying attention for a moment, you know. So when you figure out what your ruts are, you want to try and fix your ruts. Start becoming more aware using triggers. So triggers are like if you pick something in your life that happens, say 20, 25 times a day, that could be anything that could trigger you into becoming aware. It could be every time I stop at a red light, I'm going to become more aware. Every time you know, I hear a bird call, I'm going to become more aware. Every time you know, my phone rings, I'm going to take that moment to like just look around when I'm answering my phone and become more aware. So triggers can be a really powerful thing, and you can pretty much use anything as a trigger, but you just kind of commit yourself to playing the game of becoming aware and using that trigger to snap you back into awareness. Constantly testing yourself is fun as well. Just you can quiz yourself on things without, you know, preempting yourself on the questions. Like, for example, you can just be in a restaurant, you realize you're completely unaware, and at that moment the waiter or waitress is not at your table, you know, but you realize you're unaware. You take a moment to look around, and then you think to yourself, what color was the waitress's shirt, you know? And you ask yourself that, and you may or may not be able to answer it, but then when the waitress comes back, you look at her shirt and you see what color it is, and you check out what she's wearing, things like that. Or you might ask yourself about people that are around you. What are their moods? What are their habits? You can kind of question yourself about what kind of things they might be interested in, or why they're in the place that they're in. And you can also do this with your friends or your family. If you're kind of pushing yourself in your awareness, you can just say, without looking, where's the nearest exit? Tell me, you know. Or without looking, how many cars are in the parking lot? And then you may not be able to answer the question, but then you look and you confirm, or you look and see what the answer is, and you just keep pushing yourself in that way. So when I talk about practicing your mind's eye and storytelling, basically one of the things I learned when I was a military police officer was that I have to go through these intense calls, sometimes an hour and a half long, and I'd have to go back and I'd have to write a report about everything that happened, everything that was said by anyone, what the demeanor of people were. I'd have to say what the progression of events were, like I met with this person and this person came up afterwards, things like that. And really what's important is that you learn to tell the story of what happened back to yourself. So learning to tell events chronologically back to the story. So there is a little awareness thing that I do with some of my students sometimes, and there's a little story in this little booklet that they read, and it's just about this person who is ultra aware, and you can ask them, like yesterday morning when you were out on the porch, which way was the wind blowing? Where was the sun? Things like that. And the person is able to answer those questions, and not necessarily because they are conscious of that information, but that they're able to kind of travel back in their mind to that moment, and they're able to think back to where the wind was blowing on their skin and where the sun was shining on them at that moment, and then they can tell you. So really, they're not calling it up in their conscious memory. They're just replaying the story of when they were on the porch and what they were seeing. So that's a really important tool that is definitely has to be practiced. So when you're moving in the city, it's really important to move within baseline. And baseline is a concept that you may or may not be familiar with, but you are familiar with it once you hear what it is. Basically, it's just the pace or rhythm of whatever's going on around you. So if you're on a busy city street and lunch it's 1 o'clock and everybody's heading back from lunch back to work, then there's going to be a certain rhythm of those people and a pace of those people heading back to work. If you're out on the same street on a Saturday, on a shopping day, the pace and the rhythm of those people is going to be a little bit different. People are going to be a little bit more relaxed, maybe walking a little bit more slowly, looking around a little more, checking things out. If you're in a street and there's some kind of crisis going on and people are running, then that's the rhythm and that's the pace of baseline, is running and being afraid and acting like you're afraid. Okay? So just like if you were running on a city street on a Saturday, everyone would notice you. If you were not running when everybody else was running, then everyone would notice you. So you want to match the pace of your environment. And there's baseline in the city and baseline in the forest, and we'll talk about baseline in the forest a little later. And I can't tell you the next one, acting ultra aware is out of baseline. So people notice you. When you start really being aware, people will stare at you. And then it makes you kind of paranoid. And it's kind of funny. But I've been in like urban scout situations that I put myself in, urban escape situations, and been looking around at everybody and like looking behind myself and looking up and everywhere. And suddenly I'll notice that people are looking at me. And I know that I've been in situations before where we've had people out that I'm looking for myself and students that we didn't know. So then you start to be like, is that person like one of those people that's like coming to get me? And you start getting ultra weird, and then they start really staring at you. They're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? So you have to be aware without anyone noticing that you're aware. All right? And that can be tricky as well. And if you act paranoid, people will stare at you. And if you're trying to get away from people, you often do act paranoid, and then you get even more paranoid because everyone's looking at you. So let's look at this video real quick and see if you guys can pick out who is out of baseline in this video. Right, the guy in the white shirt. So you just pick that person out right away, right? Everyone else is pretty much just like blah. If someone asked you to, describe one of these people after this event was over, the person that you'd probably notice the most is that person that was running, right? Everybody else, you'd be like, I didn't really remember anybody that I saw, okay? So that's moving in baseline. So moving in baseline, I just did this little video without anybody in the frame, but basically kind of just like a general baseline, just walking, not doing anything in particular. It's baseline in the city. Then moving outside of baseline in the city, just like looking around, looking behind me quite a lot. walking pretty fast, speeding up a little bit, and then looking around the corner when I get around the corner to see if anybody's following me. So it looked pretty suspicious. People notice that kind of thing. And they aren't even necessarily consciously noticing it. They're just noticing that something's not quite right. So traveling in urban environments, like I said, match the baseline. Be unpredictable. You know, if you just go in a straight line to a straight destination, then that's predictable. Be unpredictable. Vary your routes. Maintain an awareness of where you are is really important and what direction you're traveling. You can use major roads as a landmark, but avoid traveling on them if someone's looking for you. Like you could travel down alleyways looking and keeping the road parallel to the road, or traveling out and back to get to the road. Vary your routes constantly, like I said, and that's something good to do in your daily life as well. Not only do you become more aware of everything and different routes that you can take, but also it just kind of pushes you to not get into those ruts that we talked about. And always know your escape routes. How many exits are in the building, where the exits are, is there a back door? I mean, I can't tell you how many times, we hear about these stories of like a nightclub setting on fire or something and everybody heading for the main exit at the same time, and there's other exits that people could take just because they're not aware. So, for example, how many routes are in and out of your neighborhood? How many different ways can you get in and out of your neighborhood? And most people kind of take one or two routes into and out of their neighborhood. And my wife classically gives me a hard time for going a longer way sometimes to get in and out of the neighborhood. She'd be like, "Why are you going this way? There's a much shorter way to go." But I like to explore around and just check things out. And also, are there any woods nearby? I personally am very comfortable in the woods, and most people are not. So I know that that's a place that I could escape to if I needed to. And are there areas that no one would be willing to follow you into? And we'll talk about that in a second as well.